I've spent most of my life on the road, moving freight from one corner of the country to the other, crossing borders, rolling through flat farmland, mountain passes, long deserts, endless forests, and stretches of black highway where the world feels empty except for the sound of the tires humming under you. People talk about how truckers see the country, but the truth is we see more of the empty spaces than anything else. The quiet hours, the lonely places, and sometimes the things no one else is around to witness. It was about 10 years ago up in Canada. I had a load to deliver across the provinces, a long haul that pushed me through remote stretches of highway lined with thick woods. This was before a lot of the newer rest stops were built, before GPS had as much detail as it does now. Back then you ran with a paper map in the seat beside you and hoped nothing broke down too far from a town. That night, I was running through a long stretch of wooded highway, the kind where the road just disappears into the dark, lined on both sides with black trees pressing in close, the kind of forest that looks endless even in daylight. It was cold out, the kind of cold that sets deep into the cab, even with the heater humming. The sky was clear, but the moon didn't cut through much. Most of the time it felt like I was driving through a tunnel of shadows, my headlights catching glimpses of tree trunks, branches, and the occasional glint of animal eyes from the ditch. I'd been out there for hours without seeing another vehicle. That's not unusual in some parts of Canada, especially late at night. You get used to the rhythm of it. Engine noise, the low whine of the tires, the way your headlights just keep chewing into the road ahead. After a while, it almost lulls you, like you're the only person left awake in the world. Then I saw headlights in my mirror. First, it was a relief. You spend so long alone out there that even the sight of another pair of headlights makes you feel a little less cut off. But the relief didn't last. Something about the way they moved set my nerves on edge. The lights stayed behind me, then crept closer, almost too close, then backed off again. They weaved slightly, left and right, like the driver couldn't hold steady or maybe was testing my speed. They weren't trying to pass, though, just riding my tail, moving in and out, then pulling back again. I tried to ignore it, kept my eyes forward, hands steady on the wheel, but my mirror kept drawing me back. The headlights would fade a little, then come rushing up again, so close I could feel the glare bouncing off the back of my trailer. I've had tailgaters before, but out there, in the middle of nowhere at 2 in the morning, it's different. There's nowhere to pull off, no shoulder wide enough to stop a rig, no light, no traffic. Just you, your truck, and whoever's behind you. This went on for miles. My chest felt tight, my jaw clenched. I was waiting for them to make a move, maybe try to pass, maybe try to push me, but they just kept weaving and tailing me. Then, without warning, the headlights disappeared. 1 second they were there, bright in my mirror, the next they were gone. No gradual fade like someone turning off onto a side road. Just darkness. Nothing behind me but the black stretch of highway. I eased off the throttle slightly, trying to see if they'd cut their lights and were still back there. That's a trick some drivers pull if they're trying to mess with you, or worse, set something up. But when I looked closer, I realized something that chilled me more than the headlights themselves. I could still feel it. When another vehicle is close behind you, especially on a heavy truck, you can feel it in the vibration of the road, the subtle push of displaced air, the rhythm of the pavement beneath your tires. It's not something you think about much, but it's there. And even though I saw nothing in my mirror now, I could still feel that weight behind me. The sense of another engine, another set of tires running close. I tightened my grip on the wheel, scanning the mirrors over and over. No headlights, no shadow of a car, just the endless road and trees rushing past. But the vibration stayed. The sense of being followed stayed. I drove like that for what felt like forever. Every mile dragged. My skin prickled and sweat ran down my back despite the cold. I kept expecting to see those headlights flare back on, or worse, to see something whip around and try to cut me off. But nothing came. Just that invisible tail pressing close, making my nerves fray. Finally, I saw the glow of a truck stop ahead. One of those older ones tucked off the highway, with a faded sign and a gravel lot packed with rigs. Relief flooded me. I figured if I could just pull in where there were other people, other trucks, whatever was happening would end. I rolled into the lot, engine breaking down. my lights sweeping across rows of parked trailers. The place was half full, rigs lined up like silent giants in the dark. Sodium lamps buzzed overhead, throwing pools of orange light that didn't quite reach the edges of the lot, leaving wide stretches of shadow. I slowed and swung wide, looking for a spot to park. That's when I saw him. A man stepped out of the tree line at the far edge of the lot. Not from the road, not from the diner or the fuel pumps, from the woods. He walked with a steady pace, not hurried, not stumbling. He crossed through the shadows and into the orange glow of the lights like he belonged there. My truck crawled past and I watched him. He never looked up at me, never turned his head. He just walked straight across the lot, right past the side of my cab, close enough that if I'd rolled down my window, I could have reached out and touched him. I caught a glimpse of him in my mirror as he passed. Dark jacket, jeans, something in the way his shoulders hunched forward. He didn't stop. He didn't go into the diner. He didn't head toward any of the parked rigs where drivers might have been resting inside. He just kept walking, straight across, until he slipped behind a row of trailers and vanished into the dark. I sat there in my seat, heart pounding, eyes flicking back and forth. I waited for him to come out the other side, but he never did. The space between the trailers stayed empty. And then I realized something else. I never saw the car again. All that time on the highway, the weaving headlights, the sudden blackout, the weight of another vehicle tailing me. I'd expected to see it pull in behind me at the stop, but nothing came. The road behind me stayed empty. No car, no headlights, no taillights, nothing. I parked finally, cutting the engine, but I couldn't shake the tension in my chest. I kept checking my mirrors, watching the shadows at the edges of the lot, half expecting the man to reappear, half expecting those headlights to swing in. But the night stayed still. I didn't sleep much. I sat there in my bunk with the curtains half closed, staring at the sliver of orange light leaking in, listening to the hum of idling trucks around me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those headlights weaving in my mirror, and every time I opened them, I saw the shape of that man walking past my cab into the dark. By morning, the lot looked normal again. Trucks leaving, drivers moving about, the diner clattering with noise and coffee cups. But I couldn't shake what had happened. To this day, I don't know who was behind me out there or why the lights cut out. I don't know who that man was or why he came from the woods instead of the road. I never saw either again, the car, the lights, or the stranger. What I do know is this: there are stretches of highway where the night doesn't feel empty, even when it looks like it is. Sometimes you feel eyes on you or the weight of something close behind, and you can't explain it. Sometimes, out in the dark, things follow you without ever showing themselves. That night in Canada taught me a truth I still carry. Out here, the road is long and the night is deep, and sometimes the scariest things aren't the ones you see. They're the ones you can feel pressing close, then vanishing before you ever understand what they wanted. I've been driving trucks for a long time, long enough to know that the road holds more than just pavement, fuel stops, and way stations. The longer you're out here, the more you realize it's not the driving itself that gets to you. It's the quiet stretches, the empty nights, the strange places you find yourself in when you're tired and there's no one else around. Things happen that don't always make sense, and even when they do, they leave you with a feeling you can't shake. One night in Montana, I learned that lesson in a way I'll never forget. It was late summer, one of those evenings when the sky stays light forever but darkness comes on all at once it finally sets in. I had been hauling freight across the state all day, working my way east along a stretch of highway that wound through forests and low hills. That part of Montana feels like it goes on forever. Long empty roads where you might not see another soul for an hour, but when you do, it's usually another trucker doing the same thing as you, passing in the opposite direction. I was tired, but not so tired that I couldn't keep going. The cab was humming with that steady vibration that comes from miles of driving, and I had the window cracked just enough to let in cool night air. The smell of pine was thick, the kind of smell you don't get when you're near the cities or the plains. It's a clean smell, sharp, but it carries with it a reminder of how alone you really are out there. It was around midnight when I saw it. I came around a bend where the trees pressed close on both sides, and there it was, a pickup truck sitting halfway out into the lane. Its headlights were off, but the doors were wide open, both the drivers and passengers. I slowed down immediately, flipping on my high beams. The sight hit me like a punch. Belongings were scattered all over the road. At first I thought it was junk that had fallen out of a load, but as I rolled closer, I realized it wasn't that at all. There was a wallet lying open on the pavement, some tools, a wrench, a flashlight, a pair of gloves. A child's backpack lay tipped on its side, the zipper half open with papers and pencils spilled out. That image burned into me right away. I don't have kids myself, but I've got nieces and nephews, and I knew what a backpack like that meant. Families don't just leave those behind. I came to a full stop maybe 50 feet from the truck. My rig idled heavy in the silence, headlights washing over the scene. The whole thing looked fresh. There wasn't a trace of dust on the items, no sign of weathering. It looked like someone had gotten out just minutes ago. I honked my horn, a long, sharp blast that echoed into the trees. Nothing moved. No voices, no footsteps, not even the snap of a branch. Just the forest holding its breath. I shifted in my seat, trying to make sense of it. I thought maybe it was a wreck, but the truck didn't look damaged. No flat tires, no dents. It was just parked there, like someone had pulled over in a hurry and then left. The belongings on the road, they didn't add up. After a minute, I pulled my flashlight from the dash and cracked my door open. The night air hit me cold. I stepped down onto the gravel shoulder and stood there, listening. My ears were tuned so tight I could hear the blood rushing in my head. The beam of my flashlight swept over the scattered belongings, catching on the metal of the tools and the plastic sheen of the backpack straps. I called out. Not words, just a sharp sound from my throat to test the silence. Nothing answered. I edged closer. The wallet had a few cards inside, though I didn't pull them out. The backpack looked like it belonged to a kid no older than 10. The papers inside were handwritten in pencil, just scribbles and simple math problems. The tools were laid out like someone had dropped them in the act of doing something. The driver's seat of the pickup was empty. Both front doors were open wide, and inside, the glove compartment hung down, papers spilling from it. The cab light was still faintly glowing, meaning the battery hadn't died yet. The whole scene screamed of people being there just minutes earlier. But where were they? I backed up slowly, keeping the flashlight trained on the trees. My skin crawled with the sense that eyes were on me, but I couldn't see a soul. I climbed back into my rig, shut the door, and locked it out of instinct. I laid on the horn again, longer this time, the sound tearing through the stillness. If there were people out there, they'd come. But nobody did. I sat for a while, torn between driving on and staying put. Every instinct in me said something was wrong here. I'd seen breakdowns, accidents, even people sleeping in their cars, but never a scene like this. You don't leave a wallet, tools, and a child's backpack in the middle of the road unless something bad happens fast. Finally, I got on the CB and radioed what I'd found. Took a while before I got a response. A state patrol unit was hours away, but they said they'd send someone. I stayed there, engine idling, lights blazing over the road. It was the longest night of my life. Every minute dragged. My eyes kept darting to the trees, half expecting someone, or something, to step out. The forest seemed to lean closer the longer I sat. I thought about moving the belongings off the road, but something in me said to leave them exactly as they were. By the time I saw the flashing lights of the patrol car, dawn was just starting to gray the sky. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I climbed down to meet the officer, pointing out everything I had seen. I led him through each item, each detail of how I found it. But here's the part that still twists in my gut to this day. The officer looked at me strange. He said there was nothing there. I turned around and he was right. The pickup was gone. The wallet, the tools, the backpack, everything gone. The road was empty except for my rig parked on the shoulder. No tire marks, no sign of people leaving in the night. It looked as if nothing had ever been there at all. I stood in the road dumbfounded, swearing up and down what I'd seen. The officer gave me a look that said he thought I was overtired, maybe seeing things after a long haul. But I knew better. I had stopped for something real. I'd seen the items. I'd stood next to them. I could still picture the child's handwriting on the math paper as clear as day. The patrol checked their logs later, and there was no record of a missing pickup in that area. No missing persons reports that matched. Nothing. I pulled out that morning shaken to the core. I drove until the sun was high, but I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, someone knew what I had stumbled across. Maybe it was a crime. Maybe it was something else. All I knew was that I had seen it with my own eyes, and I would never forget it. I've been through Montana many times since. Every time I pass that stretch of road, I catch myself scanning the shoulder, half expecting to see that pickup again, doors wide open, belongings scattered like breadcrumbs. But I never have. And the truth is, I'm not sure I want to. That night taught me something that every long-haul driver eventually learns in their gut. The road holds more than just the trucks and cars you see. Sometimes it holds things you can't explain, things you'll never find written down in a report or logged in a database. I still don't know what happened to the people from that truck, or why everything vanished without a trace. All I know is I was there and it was real, and it left me with a chill that still hasn't gone away. I've spent enough years on the road to know that when you drive trucks, especially logging runs, you learn to live with isolation. You get used to being parked in places no one else would willingly spend the night. Hauling logs often takes you into the middle of nowhere. Roads that are barely carved out of the forest, gravel spurs that lead to clear cuts, rough pull-offs where you wait for daylight or for a loader to finish a job. The paychecks are steady, but the nights can be long and quiet in a way that makes you feel like you're sitting on the edge of the world. There's one night in particular that has stayed with me, no matter how many miles I've put between then and now. It happened up north, deep in logging country, where the forest seems endless and the silence has a weight to it. I've been running logs out of a sight all week. The haul took me down twisting mountain roads, switchbacks barely wide enough for a loaded trailer, and stretches of gravel that rattled every bolt in the rig. That day had been longer than usual. The loaders had a breakdown which put everyone behind. By the time my truck was loaded and chained down, the sun was long gone, the sky washed in stars, and the cold had settled in like a heavy blanket. There's a spot not far from that site, just a wide patch of gravel used as a staging area. I'd stopped there before, sometimes to rest before a dawn run. It wasn't much, just a flat space, surrounded by thick trees on three sides, the cut slope of the mountain on the other. No lights, no buildings, no traffic after dark. That night, I was too tired to push down the mountain, so I parked there. I set the brakes, let the engine idle down, and sat for a while in the quiet. The forest at night is a strange thing. You'd think it's silent, but it isn't. It's alive with small noises, the crack of a branch, the scurry of some animal through the brush, the wind shifting high in the trees. After years of trucking, I'd learned not to pay those sounds much mind. They become background like static. Eventually, I climbed into the sleeper. The air was cold, and condensation formed on the windows almost immediately. I stretched out with my blanket, tucked my flashlight within reach on the bunk, and let myself drift. Sometime in the night, I woke. At first, it was just a feeling, like the air had shifted, like the silence was different. My eyes opened slowly, not all the way. I've always had this habit of letting myself wake in stages, especially when parked in lonely places. You never know what's outside, and sometimes it pays to be still, to observe before moving. That's when I saw it. Just inches from the glass of my side window, a face. Pale, expressionless, pressed close, eyes fixed on me. Every muscle in my body locked. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The condensation on the glass blurred the features, but I could see enough. The outline of a nose, the sockets of eyes, the pale oval of skin against the dark outside. Instinct kicked in. I shot upright in the bunk, heart pounding, ready to throw open the door or grab for the flashlight. But as soon as I moved, the face was gone. The window was empty, nothing but my own reflection in the faint glow of the cab lights. The forest outside was still, black as ink, not a sound but my own ragged breathing. I scrambled for the flashlight and clicked it on. The beam cut through the cab and out the side window, spilling across gravel and tree trunks. Nothing. No figure retreating, no eyes reflecting back. Just the same empty patch of ground I'd parked on hours earlier. I climbed out of the bunk, boots hitting the floor, and opened the door. Cold night air rushed in, and I swept the beam in wide arcs. The lot stretched silent, my truck sitting alone in that pocket of gravel, the forest wall pressing in on three sides. The smell of damp earth and pine filled my nose, sharp and heavy. I circled the truck slowly, light cutting across the ground. That's when I saw them, footprints, clear in the gravel, fresh, not yet softened by wind or dew. They circled the cab, looping around the doors, across the front, trailing off toward the trees. Not tire tracks, not animal prints. Boots, human. I followed them with the beam, my pulse hammering in my ears. They stopped a few yards from the tree line, then doubled back, looping in different directions, as if whoever it was had paced circles around my truck. But there was nothing else. No vehicle nearby, no parked car, no second truck, no sign of how someone could have come or gone. Just the prints and the stillness. The weight of it settled on me then. Whoever had been there wasn't just passing by. They had come on foot, in the dead of night, to stand inches from my cab window and watch me sleep. I didn't waste another second. I climbed back into the cab, slammed the door, fired the engine, and pulled out hard enough to make the trailer chains rattle. My headlights carved a path down the logging road, gravel spitting under the tires, the forest swallowing the light as quickly as I could throw it forward. I drove like that until the sky began to pale, until the ridges turned from black to gray and the first hints of daylight bled into the horizon. Only then did I ease off the throttle, my grip loosening on the wheel. By the time I reached the main highway, exhaustion hit me like a wave. But there was no way I was stopping again until I was around people, lights, noise, anything but the suffocating silence of that logging site. Even now, I think about it. The pale face in the glass, the footprints circling, the emptiness of the forest swallowing any explanation. I'll never know who it was or why they were there, but I know this: I don't take isolated pull-offs for granted anymore. I don't assume I'm alone just because I can't see headlights or hear another engine. That night taught me how thin the wall of a truck cab really is. It's just glass and steel between you and whatever walks out of the woods. And when you wake to find someone watching you through that glass, you understand how fragile your sense of safety can be. Since then, I've slept light, too light. Every rustle, every crunch of gravel, every shift of shadow outside my cab puts me on edge. Because once you've opened your eyes to find a stranger's face pressed against your window in the middle of the night, you never forget that feeling. You never forget how close danger can come when the world is quiet and you're parked alone in the dark. I've been driving a truck for decades, and if there's one thing the road teaches you, it's that sleep doesn't come easy in strange places. I've slept in my cab on the side of interstates with semis roaring by all night, at truck stops with neon buzzing outside my window, on dirt lots in logging towns, and on frozen shoulders in the middle of nowhere. I've learned to close my eyes when I have to, grab what rest I can, and tune out the world. But there was one night in the Appalachian Mountains when I learned that sometimes the world won't let you ignore it, no matter how tired you are. It was late autumn, the kind of season where the air in the mountains carries a bite. I had picked up a load earlier that day and was working my way through winding mountain roads, heading south. The Appalachians are beautiful in the daytime, with ridges rolling out like waves. The slopes covered in dense trees that turn every shade of red and gold when the leaves change. But when the sun goes down, the beauty gives way to something heavier. The trees crowd in close, the sky disappears, and the roads twist in a way that makes you feel trapped inside a long, dark maze. That evening, I'd been running since before noon, and by the time it hit midnight, my body was giving out. My eyes burned from staring at the blacktop, and my back ached from the constant pull of curves and grades. There aren't a lot of full-service truck stops in that part of the mountains, so I knew I'd have to settle for one of the pull-off spots that dot the highways. They're just gravel patches carved into the side of the road, big enough for a few trucks to park. No lights, no services, just a flat space to shut down for the night. I found one just past a bend, tucked against the slope of a ridge. My headlights caught a patch of gravel, some weeds, and the dark wall of forest pressing in behind it. No other trucks were there. I swung in, set my brakes, and let the engine idle down until the night swallowed the noise. The silence hit me hard. Out there, away from towns and traffic, the quiet is complete. You hear the tick of your engine cooling, the creak of the trailer, the distant rustle of leaves if the wind is moving. Otherwise, it's just you and the dark. I climbed into my bunk, stretched out, and tried to settle. The air had that damp mountain chill, so I pulled my blanket up and let myself drift. Sleep came, but it was the kind of light sleep you get when you know you're far from everything, the kind where your mind doesn't let go completely. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, I snapped awake. First, I didn't know why. The cab was still. The night was still. But then I heard it. A scream. It cut through the dark, sharp and high, like the sound of a woman crying out. Came from the woods, not too far off. It lasted only a second or two, then stopped, leaving silence so heavy it made my ears ring. I sat there frozen in my bunk, listening. My heart had kicked into a faster rhythm. Out on the road, you hear all kinds of things. Tires popping, brakes squealing, engines backfiring. But this was different. This was human, or at least it sounded human. A few minutes passed. Then it came again. Same sound, same sharp edge, carrying just far enough to reach me. A cry, almost like words stretched into a scream. I slid out of my bunk and sat in the driver's seat, staring out into the darkness. My headlights were off, my cab lights too. Outside the glass, the forest was just a wall of black, the gravel lot barely visible under the faint glow of stars. I thought about someone hurt out there, maybe lost, maybe attacked. I reached for my flashlight. It was a heavy one, metal, the kind that doubles as a tool or weapon if you need it. I cracked the door and stepped down onto the gravel. The cold hit me immediately, damp air seeping through my clothes, the crunch of my boots sounding too loud in the stillness. I raised the light and swept it across the trees. Pale trunks and branches flashed into view, shadows jumping with each movement. The scream didn't come again right away, but I could feel the hair on my arms standing up, every nerve in me tight. Then I heard it, off to the right this time, closer. The sound ripped through the trees, just as sharp as before. It echoed against the ridge, bouncing so it was hard to tell exactly where it came from. My beam jerked toward the noise, but all I caught were leaves and dark undergrowth. I stood still, listening, my breath showing in white clouds. Then, minutes later, another scream. This time behind me. I spun around, heart pounding, light cutting through the dark. Nothing but trees and shadows. The sound hadn't come from a single direction anymore. It was moving. Every few minutes, it came again, sometimes left, sometimes right, sometimes behind, circling the pull-off. Always just far enough that I couldn't see what made it, but close enough that I knew it was aware of me. I felt the unease sink deeper into my gut. Whoever or whatever was making that sound wasn't stationary. It was moving around my truck in wide arcs, keeping its distance but letting me know it was there. I backed up slowly, climbing into the cab and locking the door. I shut off the flashlight and sat in the dark, my eyes straining at the windshield, ears tuned to the silence between the cries. My pulse thudded in my chest, my fingers tight on the edge of the seat. The screams went on for what felt like hours, always in intervals, always shifting places. Sometimes they were closer, sharp enough that I swore I felt them in my bones. Other times they drifted farther off, fading into the depths of the woods. But they never stopped completely. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat in my seat, staring at nothing, waiting for the next sound. The minutes crawled, the cries echoing in the dark, and I realized how exposed I was. A truck cab feels big when you're rolling down a highway, but sitting still in the middle of a black forest with something circling you, it feels like a tin can. Finally, the night began to lighten. The first gray hints of dawn pushed at the sky, and the trees began to take shape out of the dark. The screams stopped as suddenly as they'd started, just gone like they'd never been there at all. When the sun finally cleared the ridge and I could see the world again, I climbed down from the cab. The forest looked ordinary, quiet, leaves wet with dew, birds starting their morning calls. Nothing moved, no sign of anyone or anything. Later that morning, I rolled into a ranger station farther down the road. I mentioned what I'd heard the night before. The ranger, a man used to those woods, told me flatly that it was likely a mountain lion. He said they're known for screams that sound like a woman crying out, and they'll circle or trail if they're curious or staking out territory. I nodded, but inside I felt a chill. Knowing what it was didn't erase the feeling of being hunted, of having something powerful and unseen watching me from the trees while I sat there trapped in my cab. That night taught me something about the mountains. Out there, the wilderness is alive in ways you don't expect. It's not ghosts or monsters. It's real things, predators that can make the hair stand up on your neck and remind you how small you are. I've parked in plenty of pull-offs since then, but I've never slept lightly again. Every rustle in the woods, every distant cry, every snap of a branch in the night pulls me back to that morning in the Appalachians, when a scream in the dark circled my truck until dawn. I've been driving trucks for a long time. Most of my life has been spent behind the wheel, staring through the windshield at dark highways, narrow back roads, and miles of pavement with only the hum of my engine to keep me company. It's a lonely life, but it's one I chose, and over the years I've seen my fair share of strange things on the road. But there's one night that has never left me, and no matter how many loads I haul or how many states I cross, it always sits in the back of my head like a weight pressing down. It happened in Oregon, out in the forests where the roads twist like veins through endless walls of pine and fir. I had a contract that month hauling logs out of a site deep in the woods. The roads were rough and narrow, more dirt than pavement in some stretches, and there weren't many people around except the occasional trucker or someone from the logging crews. The air was cold and damp, the kind of chill that hangs low over the ground and seeps into your clothes. That night, I was running a late haul. It was around 2 in the morning, pitch black except for the cut of my headlights through the trees. My trailer was stacked high with logs, chained down tight, and the weight made the truck groan every time I leaned into a curve. I had the radio low, static humming more than music, and I remember thinking how quiet the world felt. Not just quiet, but empty in a way that only deep forest roads get at night. I came around a bend and saw it. Just a small car parked right at the edge of the tree line. A dark sedan, maybe 10 or 15 years old, sitting half off the gravel shoulder. The headlights weren't on, but I noticed right away that the engine was running. The faint glow of the dash lights shone inside, giving the windshield a dull green tint. It struck me as odd, because cars don't usually sit out there at that hour without a reason. People don't pull off in the middle of nowhere unless they're broken down or lost. As my truck rumbled closer, I glanced inside the car. There were two people sitting in the front seats. A man behind the wheel, a woman in the passenger seat. What got me wasn't that they were there. It was the way they were sitting, completely still, not moving, not shifting, not even glancing in my direction as I passed. Most folks, even if they're half asleep, will twitch or turn their head when a 40-ton truck roars by just a few feet away. But these two, they sat there like mannequins, rigid and frozen, staring straight ahead. I felt a tightness crawl up my neck as I drove past. Something about it didn't sit right. I looked in my mirror and saw the faint exhaust drifting up from the tailpipe, steady, like the car had just been started. I thought maybe they were resting, maybe they'd had too much to drink and were sleeping it off. But even then, people don't sit that still. Something about it gnawed at me, but I had a schedule to keep, and with a load of logs behind me, I couldn't exactly stop on a narrow forest road without risking someone coming around the bend and slamming into me. I shook it off and kept rolling, telling myself I was overthinking it. Strange things look stranger at night, I thought. I'd seen enough shadows and shapes on the road to know the mind plays tricks when it's dark and you're tired. Still, the image of them, motionless under that faint glow, stuck with me for miles. Hours later, after dropping the load and turning back, I came down the same stretch of road. The night was lighter now, closer to dawn, but the forest still pressed heavy on both sides. My headlights cut through the mist that had settled in, and I felt a strange dread before I even rounded the bend. Something inside me already knew, and there it was, the car. Same position, same angle against the tree line, engine still running. My stomach dropped. I slowed as much as I could without risking my trailer sliding on the gravel, and I turned my head to look. The two figures were still inside. Same posture, same stillness. Hours had passed, and they hadn't moved an inch. The man's hands rested on the wheel, his head tilted forward slightly, and the woman sat with her face pointed ahead, unmoving. The dashboard still glowed faint green. The exhaust still puffed steady from the tailpipe. It was wrong, deeply wrong, the kind of wrong that settles into your bones. I drove on, but my hands were tight on the wheel, and every nerve in me screamed that I needed to do something. I replayed the sight over and over in my head as the miles rolled under me. By the time I hit the next stop with cell service, I pulled over and called it in. I gave them the mile marker, the description of the car, everything I could remember. The dispatcher didn't say much, just that they'd send someone out. The rest of that run felt endless. My gut churned with unease, and my mind wouldn't quit imagining what I'd seen. I kept wondering if I should have stopped, if I should have knocked on the window or tried to wake them. But I also knew how dangerous that could be. Out there in the woods at 2 a.m, you don't just walk up to a running car with strangers inside. Too many things could go wrong. It wasn't until the next day that I heard back. One of the guys from the yard mentioned that word had spread. The police had gone out to check the car. The two people inside, they were dead, both of them. The coroner said they'd been gone for hours before I ever drove past the first time. I remember standing there, my coffee going cold in my hand, and feeling a wave of cold dread wash over me. I had seen them. I had seen their bodies sitting upright in that car, engine idling, as if they were alive. But they weren't. They hadn't been for a long time. That thought stays with me. The silence of the forest, the steady hum of their idling engine, the way they sat so perfectly still as I passed. I can still picture the glow of the dashboard lights on their faces. I had driven by death without realizing it. The road looks the same when I haul through there now, but every time I pass that stretch, I feel the hair rise on my arms. I keep expecting to see another car parked there, headlights off, engine running, figures inside unmoving. And I know if I ever do, I'll feel that same sick chill again. It wasn't ghosts or anything out of a storybook. Just two people who died in the wrong place at the wrong time, and me, a trucker rolling past them in the dark, not knowing what I was really looking at. That's the truth of the road. You see things you can't explain, and sometimes the explanations are worse than anything your mind could invent. That night taught me something about silence, about stillness, about the way death can sit quietly in plain sight without announcing itself. And it taught me that no matter how many miles I drive, some images stay with you forever.